Hey guys, welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. And what an absolutely explosive week for exposing Democrat corruption. We're talking billions in corruption stolen from American taxpayers on Tim Walz's watch. But a 23-year-old investigative journalist is cracking the case. You'd probably ask, where are the mainstream journalists? Where are the big agencies whose job it is to do this? But it doesn't matter because we have guys like Nick Shirley doing it. The fake news sure wasn't going to cover it, guys. We know that. So Nick is going to join us live in just a few moments. There's so much to get into, so much to cover. So make sure you guys are liking, sharing, subscribing so you never miss one of these major episodes. Remember, if you missed the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, Spotify. If you get your podcast that way or your friends do, make sure you know they're also there. For all of the top headlines that we cover on the show, go check out my news app, MXM News, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this kind of programming. So if you follow politics, you know everyone's got an opinion. But on Polymarket, you actually get real odds on what's likely to happen. Polymarket is a prediction market where people trade on real events, elections, debates, policy moves, and it doesn't stop at politics. There's markets on the economy, tech, sports, pop culture, and so much more. It's all live, it's transparent, and it gives you a real-time indicator of what people are really think is going to happen. So give it a look, check it out at polymarket.com. I think you'll have some fun. And now, guys, let's get into our top story. For years, there's been suspicion about massive fraud in Minnesota social services programs, and it ties all back to the Somali community there. Programs like Feeding Our Future, childcare scams, healthcare grift, and many more have been getting rich on the taxpayers' dime. And you know who's in charge of all of this while it's happening? That's right, your favorite governor, Tim Walz, the same guy Kamala Harris thought was qualified to be literally a heartbeat away from the presidency as her vice presidential pick. The scope of this fraud was something nobody fully understood until this week. Enter Nick Shirley, a 23-year-old independent journalist, a YouTuber from Utah who decided to do something radical, guys, something absolutely crazy, something the billion-dollar mainstream media apparently couldn't figure out how to do, even though I guess that's supposed to be their stated purpose. He actually showed up, and he looked into it. Take a look.
Massive fraud is taking place within the government and the Somali population. Here, this building alone, Quality Learning Center, is a daycare, yet they spelled learning wrong, and they said Learing. This daycare alone in 2025 has received $1.9 million from the government. And the strange things about these childcare centers is there's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday, and if you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed and the windows are all blacked out. No one's working, midday, children should be in here, and this place is licensed for 99 children, and this is the outside. There's no windows, no nothing, and like I said, they literally spelt the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota. The government is complicit with this, and this is just one of the hundreds of child daycare centers here inside of Minneapolis being ran by the Somali population. It's sad that it's happening here in Minnesota, and it stinks that it's happening and it's being labeled on the Somali population. However, that's just the facts of what's happening here inside of Minnesota. $1.9 million for this daycare center that can't even spell learning right.
Guys, these are licensed Learing centers. I mean, learning centers. Licensed daycare centers. Think about that. Supposed to have 99 children enrolled, receiving nearly $2 million a year from Minnesota's taxpayers, also funded in part by the federal government. So also your taxpayer dollars if you're not in Minnesota. And there's nobody there. This sign, they can't even spell learning. They can't even do that right. And when Nick Shirley shows up, some woman starts screaming that he's ICE. This facility has received millions in total from the state funding for a building with no children, no activities, and a staff that won't answer questions, and in some cases, won't even answer the door. Let that sink in for a second, guys. Now, this isn't happening, guys, in a vacuum. This is part of a pattern of industrial scale fraud that's been bleeding Minnesota dry for years. Let's talk about feeding our future. This was the nonprofit that was supposed to feed hungry kids during COVID. At its peak, they claimed to operate nearly 300 meal sites, serving 90 million meals. That's 120,000 meals a day, folks. Federal prosecutors now say that only 3% of the money, 3% of the money went to actual food. The rest? Luxury cars, overseas real estate. Someone bought an aircraft in Nairobi, Kenya, and the funds even went to terror group Al-Shabaab. This alone was the largest pandemic relief fraud scheme in America. $250 million stolen. 78 people charged, 57 convicted so far. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Nick Shirley found hundreds of these businesses registered to the same addresses, mailboxes at UPS stores, working with a local source who'd been tracking this for years, who noticed that the daycare centers in his neighborhood never seemed to actually have any children in them, ever. And once Nick began uncovering this, he was followed, threatened, subject to intimidation tactics. Check this out.
By the Somalis, this is another daycare center, absolutely no signage, and there's no footprints in the snow of children playing outside. $5 million within the past
5.9 million in 2 years. 5.9 million they received in 2 years. That facility right there.
And now we have a group of Somalis telling us in our vehicle right now.
From this daycare center, we headed over to the infamous Quality Learning Center, which actually spells Quality Learing Center on the outside of their sign. That's how blatant.
Nick found over 110 million in suspicious payments in a single day of investigation. A single day. Imagine how much more there is out there. So the real question is, when is Tim Walz getting charged? What was the governor doing with billions of dollars that were being siphoned out of his state? There's growing evidence that he was aware of what was happening. And let's just let it happen. He just let it happen, guys. Now, Walz claims the guardrails were taken off during COVID. He says the federal government told states to move the money, yada, yada, yada. But here's the problem. CBS News reported that state officials spotted signs of fraud in July of 2019. That's 6 months before COVID even started. And according to former employees at the Minnesota Department of Education, they faced extreme pressure to stop asking questions. So what's Walt's latest excuse? You guessed it, folks. White supremacy.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life. And I think everybody in this room knows what they're doing. So we're here today to say enough of this. We're here today to stand that Minnesota will protect their neighbors.
And by the way, this is the same Tim Walz who let Minneapolis burn during the George Floyd riots. The same Tim Walz who implemented some of the most draconian COVID lockdowns in the country. The same one who said calling out the fraud was racist. The same one who lied about his military service. We knew he was retarded, folks, but now we also know that he's corrupt. So now it's time to deliver strong, powerful accountability. Not strongly worded letters. Unless there's search warrants, we need indictments and we need convictions. But I gotta ask the obvious question here. Where was the mainstream media on this story? This fraud has been going on for years. Apparently mainstream media knew about it in 2019. Billions of dollars right there in the public records. And that's the difference between real journalism and the regime media propaganda that we see so much of. Real journalists follow the story. Regime media protects the narrative. Democrats created a system with zero accountability. They shovel money out the door to buy votes and then claim they're helping people when they're really just funding their own political machine. The Government Accountability Office estimates that federal taxpayers lose between $233 and $521 billion every year. Think about that. $500 billion, okay? Every year to fraud across all programs. That's not a rounding error, guys. That is a crisis. We're not going to let this slide. So, guys, joining me now, investigative journalist Nick Shirley, a guy who really, Nick, it's awesome to have you first and foremost, but just awesome that you took the initiative to actually do, what we have an entire industry, what they're supposed to be doing, but refuse to do it.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, literally within one day, estimated $110 million in fraud was found.
I mean, how much more is there? I can only imagine what you can cover. I mean, when I watched the video, you even said in one afternoon. Imagine you spent a month there. It feels like this is truly a billion-dollar scam.
Oh no, it definitely is in the billions for sure. Because like I said, within one day, $110 million, and that was just a few daycares and 2 industrialized buildings with over 36 home health care providers combined between the 2 buildings. So imagine we know how much healthcare is here in the United States. Imagine how much million has been funneled through those companies.
Well, our healthcare is so expensive in part because of this kind of fraud. I mean, they're funding things that actually don't do anything for anyone. People are stealing the money, and then it's put on the American taxpayer in the end.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And then you'll hear Democrats always talk about healthcare. I mean, they shut down the whole entire government because of healthcare. And meanwhile, they're letting just billions of dollars get sent around. It's like, okay, well, maybe if you did that, you might drop the premiums a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Nick, your video's now been viewed over 100 million times on X, probably a lot more than that since we even started talking. When you set out to film in Minneapolis, did you have any sense that this would explode the way it has?
I mean, I don't think I've ever seen 100 million views on a video on X before. So definitely unprecedented. Like, I think that's like newfound territory for a documentary style video on X. But it also shows how powerful it hits when it's actually something that's at home and it's something that should have been fixed, right? Mm-hmm. And something that people have known about the fraud for years, but no one's actually had the guts to go and talk to it and confront it head on. You always hear people talk, but you never see people actually follow through with action. And so that's why it hits so hard, because it's something that we could literally fix tomorrow as far as not letting it happen anymore.
Do you think that, perhaps, all these Somalis ended up in Minnesota because, generally the people there are just known for being nice and they don't want to be called a mean name. And so they just they take it and they take it and they take it and they're never going to call it out. I mean, do you think that was a strategic play when all that migration seemed to happen there? Because, in all fairness, I can't think of a place that's probably more opposite of Somalia than Minnesota, whether that's the people, whether that's the weather, whether it's, anything. It almost seems like that was intentional.
Yeah, it definitely, the reason why a lot of them have told me that they moved here is because they found that people obviously wanted to be nice, and then when one Somali moves, the rest of them move with them. So they were then accepted here in the community, and I doubt they were accepted underneath refugee status. I think when Obama was president, a large portion of them. And so I doubt the Minnesota people thought, well, they're going to be here forever. And obviously, once you're here, we've learned that once a migrant is here, they do not like to go back to their home country.
Yeah, no, it's or they vacation there, but they don't want to live there because, but I guess if I was stealing billions of dollars, I guess I'd probably stay in the place that was funding that kind of theft.
Exactly. Can you imagine? They're so mad. The Somalians are so mad because can you imagine? For years, you're at the dinner table talking with your family about how everything's good. Oh, we don't need to worry because the government and whatnot. I mean, 81% of these people are on welfare, but on top of that, they're collecting millions of dollars for these companies. Tax exempt, by the way, especially the daycares. So can you imagine how mad they are now? Like, that's why right now, there's, people are so upset. Like, there's, bounties on me here in Minnesota because people are so upset as far as the fraud that's being exposed because they know their time's up and they know everyone's just sick and tired of this happening inside their own state and across America.
What have some of those threats been?
Yeah, there was apparently a bolo that they used. That's the word that some people told me was on me, and I can't reveal too much because I don't want to reveal. But lots of messages, death threats, obviously on social media, and then it's just not the most safe thing for me to be moving around freely right now.
I think that's fair. I mean, When you started doing this, Nick, what was the moment during filming when you realized that you might be onto something much bigger than perhaps you initially thought?
Yeah, I think when we went to the daycares and I knew planning this video like, okay, this is going to be big. But when I arrived to the first daycare center that had two daycares in the same building and all the buildings were blocked out, like I thought I was just gonna walk into the door, go into the reception, talk to the people. But no, that wasn't even an option. You couldn't even get inside. And all the windows are boarded out or are all blacked out. Like what business operates with blacked out windows?
Yeah. Certainly not a daycare center. It sort of feels
Yeah,
counterintuitive.
especially
It'd be one thing
daycare,
if there was
right?
like 10 kids and it's supposed to be 25 or, 70 kids if it's supposed to be 100. But it seems like there was absolutely no kids in any of these places.
Yeah, and then if you just drive around in Minneapolis, it's actually incredible. If you drive around and you think about the word daycare, or you just think about it, you'll see daycares literally everywhere. I'm not joking. And then if you don't see daycares, you'll see adult daycares. You'll see home health care services. You'll see like the craziest sort of welfare programs, whether it's like African communities services, like the weirdest stuff you'll see just driving around Minneapolis. And it's like, okay, well, one, me and you we like to make money, right? So we know how to get profits. These people, they don't have to make profits. Their businesses are quite literally receiving money from the government versus actually creating some sort of value in return for a profit. And so it's absolutely insane.
So, walk us through the whole racket. How does it work? I mean, it seems like there's a transportation component of this that, ties it all together. I mean, it's not just daycare. It seems like it's going to be, and I'm sure in the, the weeks and months ahead, they'll come up with 30 other businesses that were able to get these kind of government grants that aren't performing any services and just taking that money. But talk us through how the whole scheme works. Someone sets up a daycare, they get the license, and then they take the money. No one ever checks. No one bothers to look. And how does it all work?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they apply for these daycares, but Tim Walz has said just last year, I believe he said like, oh, we're gonna build out our program even more. So people just know, okay, well, let's start a daycare, and we know we can receive this money from the government. So they'll either start a daycare or a home health care or an adult daycare and any other that has anything else to do with that. And then on top of that, what helps them to be able to continue this is by having these transportation companies that they are then able to say, well, actually look at the services we're providing, but they actually don't provide the services. They just have those written down. And so if you drive around Minnesota or Minneapolis, you'll see just a ton of these transportation vehicles, but you'll never see anybody inside the car with the driver. So these drivers are just moving around the whole entire system while people are just funneling money through that, saying that they're providing a service to keep the numbers correct on the daycare sides, the adult daycare sides. So the transportation companies are super key in order to keep the system revolving. And that's how you kind of get the spin-wheel effect of all the fraud.
So, walk us through your methodology a little bit. How did you identify, which facilities to visit and what sources, you're using to track, the funding amount?
Yeah, so luckily, there's a man by the name of David. I've known about the fraud for a while, but with having my own YouTube channel and having to do everything, it's hard to really investigate something as into detail as this man David was able to do, because he's been doing it for years. And he's been trying to get people to listen to him for years. And he's gone to journalists, people, but they won't even shed a light on what he's saying. And so with my research and his research, we combined it all. And then he was able to get the exact funding from somebody inside of the Capitol that had the CCAP numbers. And from there, we were able to go around the city and make our plans as to where we were going to go. And so without this David guy, a lot of this would not have been possible, because I knew about the fraud, but how can you actually show proof of the fraud if you don't have the physical number of the cash, which he was able to provide. So that was really key to it. But I mean, if you just talk to Minnesotans, they're not happy about it. I mean, Islam's on the rise there. Churches are being replaced with mosques inside of towns. It's crazy, and so they've hit a point where they just are through the roof and just annoyed by what's happening.
How many people do you think are involved in these scams? Is this like, one person that has 100 daycare centers that's making millions? Is it thousands of people that are all taking a little piece of it? Is it just funneled back to the community? Where does some of that money end up?
Communities. it's entire communities. I mean, one man can have 4 wives who are all in on it with him. You know what I mean? So one man can be married to 4 wives. The wives can be working the daycare, but because they receive all that money in cash, they're actually not going to put that person probably on a W-2 or whatever it is. And so then they're able to also apply for welfare while they're receiving this millions of dollars. Because they have 4 wives, they can apply for welfare on them as well. And so that's why nearly 81% of Somalians in Minnesota are on welfare, because they're able to scam the system and able to move money around inside of these communities. I mean, there's not white people, there's not Mexicans inside of their communities, inside their apartment complexes. It's just Somalians.
Yeah, and
I hope this is making sense.
no, it makes total sense. I guess the question is, with all of these daycare centers, I mean, are there even enough children to have been in these things to begin with, like in the entire state of Minnesota, or is it just, hey, we can do this because we'll know we'll get a grant, as long as we say we're doing it for 100 kids, that it doesn't have to be 100 kids in the area, they just keep doing it and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, and what daycare is like? How is it just free for everyone? Like, I don't know. I'm not a dad, but like, who starts a business thinking that we're gonna just receive money from the government? How's that even a thought process somebody could make? Like, you have to provide some sort of value in order to create a profit for your business. And so that's when they start hearing about this fraud, or that they're able to get this money, it just incentivized more and more people. And that's why the system is so big, and why it's going to take so long to get down to the exact number of how much money is in fraud, because it is like the roots are so deep,
Yeah.
Don. The roots are so deep that people are going to be investigating this for a very long time to come.
Yeah, no, I know the FBI has been looking at this for a few months as well. I mean, I'm glad you brought it to light, because I think it takes some of that public outrage of people actually seeing, their taxpayer dollars at work. I mean, people are paying for their own daycare for their children, and apparently they're funding this fake daycare to enrich, an immigrant population that's apparently trying to defraud the American public, and doing so to the tune of really big numbers.
Yeah, it's just sad, because we all work so hard to be able to live how we want to live and to be able to support ourselves and our family. And then you just have these people just stealing literally millions and billions of dollars. And if you go inside of any of their grocery stores, they don't just have grocery stores. Inside their grocery stores, they have like 10 different businesses inside. And a lot of those businesses are also money transferring locations, money transfers, so they can send the money back to Somalia.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so
that was a big thing that came out. I
crazy.
mean, some of this money is literally ending up with Al-Shabaab, like an actual known terror group. I mean, the remittances, so it's American taxpayer dollars supposed to be helping Americans, ultimately getting sent to Somalia and terror groups. I mean, that's a pretty scary proposition. I mean, it's bad enough that it was happening and it's just, coming out of the pockets of the American taxpayer. It's a whole nother thing that a lot of it's ending up in the hands of a terror group, not exactly known for doing nice things anywhere.
Yeah, it's sickening actually, because I mean, there's estimated $9 billion in fraud. The GDP of Somalia is $12 billion. We've literally given the entire GDP of Somalia to them through fraud.
It's wild. I guess at one point in the video, you're confronted by a woman who accuses you of being with ICE. I mean, this is, seemed, clearly a very liberal, white woman even. And when you brought up some of the basic facts, like, aren't you upset that your taxpayer dollars are, going to, fund this thing, and it's clearly a scam and fraud? And she didn't care, I guess. You were very clear that you weren't with ICE. But what was going through your mind at that moment, and how do you handle those kinds of confrontations?
It's just this crazy logic that some people have came to, that for speaking out against the facts, you are some sort of racist, or you're some sort of Nazi, or some sort of fascist. You're the Gestapo, right? And so, like, that lady in that clip, you see that she's so, like, caught off guard. She's like, oh, wait, I was just calling you ICE, and you don't belong here. But ma'am, $1.9 million is to this daycare. Do you see any children here? They can't answer the logic. Their logic, like, breaks their logic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I asked earlier, but, in addition to the threats, there's also been legal warnings, or legal threats since publishing sort of the investigation. This is really shaking the Democrat machine hornet's nest, so to speak, because it does feel like I saw something, a bunch of these places all of a sudden, like this week, the second this stuff broke, started donating to Democrats immediately because I guess it's a really big voting bloc in Minnesota. And hey, if you can elect the politicians and they're going to give you what they want so they can keep getting reelected, maybe they just try to keep the fraud going in perpetuity.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't want to stop the fraud, obviously, because you have 100,000 voters, and now with the uproar, why would they ever vote for a Republican? Ever vote for a Republican?
Yeah.
It would be, in Muslims, they should be very conservative with their values that they have. That they're actually their values lean more aligned with conservative values than Democrats, especially woke Democrats. Yeah. So, but why would you ever vote for somebody who's going to take away your funding?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's illegal funding, I mean, I guess, it doesn't matter. Funding is funding to them, I guess. If they're willing to do this, they're not going to. And, Minnesota's one of those places, and on the campaign trail in 16 and 20 and 24, it's like, hey, we think we can, make some moves here finally. You're never going to make any moves because people are going to always vote for the free stuff, no matter what. But I was wondering, when you were doing this, were there areas that you weren't able to cover? I mean, you have a 42-minute video. That's the fact that you have 100 million views on a 42-minute video is amazing. But where else do you want to look? Where are you still looking? Is this mostly in one neighborhood, or is this also across the rest of the city, the state, and perhaps even the country?
It's all across the country. I mean, if you just look at the homeless industrial complex, that's a whole separate thing. But here in Minnesota, that's just a small fraction. Like I just touched on the daycares and the home health care. I didn't even touch on all other stuff. So be ready for part 2 coming out very soon about that, because like literally the corruption is so deep, and within the government. I mean, Tim Walz, it's impossible for him to not know about this, because the same names are being used to receive these stuff, like multiple violations inside of these daycares, yet they continue to give the money. I mean, I've seen things like Elon Omar, her net worth has skyrocketed to $30 million. If that's true, that's absolutely absurd. Even if it's upwards of $5 million, that's crazy from being in debt.
It's nuts. Yeah, it's a pretty good ROI on a $175,000 whatever it is congressional salary. I mean, it's amazing. But have you heard from any more members of Minnesota's Somali community? And if so, what have they told you? Are there ones that are actually disgusted that it's going on, or are they all just kind of happy that their friends and cousins are getting rich? Are they mostly foes? Have there been any allies? Are there actual whistleblowers beyond the gentleman that sort of took you through the numbers, which I assume he just spent a lot of time going through public records, and it was pretty easy to find that funding?
Yeah, they're all so mad. They're all calling me a racist. They're just saying all this crazy stuff. I'm like, okay, well, what do you think about the fraud? They're like, well, fraud's bad. I'm like, and then they'll say fraud's bad, and the next thing they say is you're a racist. I'm like, no, we're talking about fraud. You'll see in this video I have coming out soon, I'm talking to a black man, and we're talking about the fraud. He's against the fraud, and he's not a Somalian. He's African American, however you want to call him. But I'm talking to him like, this is fraud. And then all of a sudden, the Somalian stops his car in the middle of the intersection and comes out and runs at me, calling me a racist. And then all this keeps going for like 5 minutes. Security has to step in to stop this guy. And then he leaves, and I talk to the black guy I'm talking to, like, oh, see? Like, this isn't about race, right? He's like, no, bro, this is all about fraud.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everyone else wakes up to it, because it's got to stop. Now, I know you've met with my father at the White House to discuss your work on Antifa. You were covering that. You were early, on that. What parables are there, between perhaps this story, and what was going on with Antifa, and say the Somali fraud? I mean, it seems like the whole Antifa scheme probably was a similar kind of laundering operation. It was amazing how pallets of bricks magically showed up at exactly the right place at exactly the right time. These are all really highly organized things. This is not a natural story that's transpiring because of George Floyd. This is a very clear setup.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that sense of community and mob mentality, as far as we'll defend our people until, even if it is criminal. Especially that's how Antifa is. They literally just get in black clothes and they go commit whatever crime they want. And here it's somewhat similar, as far as they'll start these daycares and receive all this money, and they'll never say anything against it. to cut their funding, even if it is against it.
Yeah. So, on a personal note, how did you get into all of this? I mean, you're 23. You were covering Antifa. That's years ago. I mean, you were a teenager when that started. I know you've been at it for a while, but where does your journalism story start?
Yeah, it really starts back in 2020, but at that time, you couldn't make videos on politics on YouTube, especially if you were a smaller creator, because if you even put the word Trump in a thumbnail or in a title, they would demonetize your video. So there's
Although I know
no,
that's why I'm on Rumble, because I couldn't have done this on YouTube when it started, and they would have thrown me off in 5 minutes. And so, always about promoting those who are willing to actually promote free speech. And so Rumble was great with that.
yeah, so it's amazing that now we have these free speech platforms where it made it, all these other platforms have to kind of level out the field a little bit. But for instance, some people are on Rumble that can't be on YouTube, so therefore free speech isn't on all platforms.
Yeah.
But so I kind of just got into that, and then I learned Spanish, and I started going down to the border, and I was able to investigate. That was like my big thing, is like expose the border crisis as to what it really was, what it was. And I was able to interview these migrants, and nobody knew they're just being trafficked over in the way that they were. And so I kind of kept going into the migrant industrial complex, that's what you'd call it, and the funding that was going through there, and migrants receiving thousands of dollars to live in hotels in New York City. And then I just kept at it every single week for the past 104 weeks. I've produced some sort of YouTube video investigating something here inside the United States. And obviously this one just struck a nerve with everybody, because it's so close to home, and it's just something that should not be happening.
Yeah, I mean, how did it start? What made you want to go in and start doing this? What was the was there a moment where you're like, hey, no one else is doing this, I'm just going to do it? Or, did you have a long history of wanting to be a journalist?
Yeah, I mean, I was always a YouTuber, and like in high school and stuff, I knew that's like what I want to do. And then as you mature, you realize like, oh, you start to see, and especially when you start to travel, you see things for what they really are, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And so like I've always been interested in the political side of things, because it's actually what makes the world go round. And so I started getting involved in thinking about that sort of stuff. And then like a lot of it was what really opened my eyes about how corrupt the government can be, especially with the border, when they were just bringing in millions of people. I would speak to people inside camps in Mexico, and how they were getting trafficked, and how they were waiting for the CBP app that nobody knew about. And so I started to see how corrupt things could get. And that's really what got me into the really deep politics.
Yeah, I mean, one of your best videos I saw a while ago is when you go to New York City's Canal Street with all the fake designer bags, and you get yelled at by the other vendors. Can you take us inside sort of your editorial process, and how did you even come up with that idea to go look at this stuff and what was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, Canal Street, I remember going there as a 16-year-old in New York City, and you'd go there and you'd buy a few things, and it's never been legal to sell counterfeit goods, but it wasn't like hostile. It wasn't like 1,000 of these African migrants from Senegal that are like 6'6", and you show a camera and they freak out. It was never like that. And so then I went to New York again, and I saw what was happening. I was like, what is going on? And these guys are selling drugs. Like I remember seeing just buckets of weed on the side of the streets of New York City. I'm like, what? Like, how is this happening? And so then I was like, I have to make a video on this, because just like, that's not right what's going on, especially like the buckets of weed just sitting out there in the open. And then that's kind of what really struck my nerve on that, and seeing how hostile they were around a camera. So they obviously knew they were doing something wrong. And people don't understand how NYPD wants to do their job, but the judges don't let them. So they're not they'll arrest these people, but they'll arrest them, and the next day they're released. And so I started kind of seeing how like things are shifting, especially with Mandami and who he really is, as far as saying like defunding the police, how he does not support the police. He can say what he wants, but he does not. And
yeah,
so I
well,
really
he
want
doesn't
to
seem to
show
support the fire department either, because I know they put in, I guess, the first lesbian fire chief in New York, which would be wonderful if she was maybe a good fire person, but she's never even been a firefighter. It's just, checking a box. Like we filled it. I mean, that didn't work out so well in California. We saw during the wildfires when they had, the person that they touted as this great, first lesbian fire chief there. That was a major fail. I mean, people are going to die because of these decisions and this woke policy. Real. And it's really scary that it just keeps happening. And everyone's like, oh, it's so wonderful that we're doing it. I'm like, I don't understand what's wonderful about it. Like, you know what? If every firefighter was a lesbian, and they were just better at being firefighters, I'm totally fine with it. I couldn't care less. But like, if we're just sticking them in because they are a lesbian and have never even been a firefighter or don't know anything about it, that's scary because you're gambling with people's lives.
Yeah, so it's scary the fact that people are able to do stuff illegally on the streets of New York City and they'll just be released the next day. And the people that they're putting in positions, like you just said, it's like, okay, no, like we have to think critically here and think with common sense because women will get assaulted and they do get assaulted every day in New York City, and their violators are then released on the street the next day. And so people really need to think critically about who they want in office. And that's kind of what led me to go do the Canal Street video. And then you saw the deportations happen, and the guys that punched my cameraman and jumped me, they got deported, which was like crazy, right? So it just proved that
that's a
they're
nice
doing
win.
something wrong. Yeah, yeah. So then when I walk down Canal Street now, it's like I have like this cloak of them thinking I'm some sort of Fed, and they just like run, just like a bunch of cockroaches. It's wild.
So listen, I mean, it's a scary game because you're taking on some, let's call it, fairly tough, aggressive people. What does your family think of all of this? Are they concerned for you? Or are they, happy that you're doing, yeoman's work?
Yeah, I think like it wasn't a. Now it's getting very concerning. I mean, I literally just had the most viral video of the year, and you're really starting to piss off the people, especially when it comes to their money, right? So like now, just like even walking in the airport, just like the amount of people that come up to me or the eyes that keep sticking on me, it's like kind of concerning, and it is a little scary. So I got to kind of plan and more strategize, be more strategic with how I film, because imagine if you were to walk out and go interview Somalis, right? It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Like the popularity wise, especially like that's why you don't see podcasters who have these huge platforms going out to make these videos, because of how dangerous it actually is and how recognizable they are, especially if you're seeing somebody on the Facebook or seeing them on TikTok and whatnot, right? It is getting very dangerous. So now I have to like up my security, which I never had before, to go film. Like today I had like 4 security guards. So
Yeah.
it's
Be careful with that one. It's a scary world, and you're taking on, like I said, some pretty bad people who are seriously financially motivated. Were you doing this stuff and breaking stories, even in middle school and high school, or what was sort of the first big break? Was it sort of the Antifa stuff that you did?
The first big break, like I was a high schooler, so I snuck into Jake Paul's wedding, and that's like blew my YouTube channel up from 800 subscribers to 5,000 subscribers. And I would just do like goofy high school stuff, whether it was sneaking into Jake Paul's wedding or throwing my mom a birthday party with 100 and something kids from the high school. Like, I was also like the star athlete on the football team, state competitor in track. So like I've always just been like the athlete, YouTuber, popular kid at school, and then I just have continued to use my talents, and this is what it is today.
That's a pretty serious evolution, going from being a Jake Paul wedding crasher to literally breaking one of the biggest stories, perhaps the biggest story of fraud in American history.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. It's just like cool to see, honestly, how like God's used me in certain ways to craft my skill, and like I'm still using the same tactics I used to sneak into Jake Paul's wedding to go talk to people and try to get them to tell me about their daycare center that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like cool how God uses you for certain talents, and how you really don't know what path you're going on, but God does, as long as you're like in line with his path.
So what are your thoughts on, where do you go from here? I mean, I even have friends in media that were like, hey, do you know how to get a hold of Nick? Like, we want to offer him a job at, let's call it, independent or more mainstream, but like, conservative leaning people who want the truth out there, or are you just happy doing it on your own?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it on my own. Like that's how I'm doing it. But I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not interested, but I'm also like, I love what I'm doing by building up my own channel and having my own, I can do my own schedule and everything like that. But I think what's cool now is you're seeing my journalism actually create a change in the world. I mean, that's like the whole point of doing journalism, is to create change. And so it's kind of funny when you get invited to the White House, and then after that, everyone's calling you a Fed. It's like, well, wasn't that the whole purpose of that journalism, was to bring enough awareness to create a change?
Yeah.
right? And so like now my journalism's creating change, which is really cool. And I think I'm in my like acquiring knowledge phase in life where I'm just taking in everything, whether it's going into the White House and doing a roundtable and meeting and listening to what the president has to say, or if it's talking to some homeless person on the street about the addictions of fentanyl, is eventually just to use all that knowledge to then be able to form my opinions. And I'm not trying to push my opinions on people right now, and I'm just more so just showing them things for what they are. But eventually, I'd like to maybe create a change or get into politics because I can't be on the streets forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple more 100 million view videos, and you're not going to be able to surprise anyone anymore.
No, exactly.
They're gonna
I
see
can't
it
even
coming.
protest anymore. It's just like it's wild.
You know, in the time that you've been doing this, how much do you think the media landscape has changed? In your mind, you're living this in real time. You're seeing it. You're forcing them, even if they're sort of begrudgingly doing it. You're forcing the mainstream media to talk about this because it's too big a story to totally ignore. They'd lose what's left of their already waning credibility. But how have you noticed the media changing because of sort of independent journalists like yourselves actually being the people that are breaking real stories when it used to be the legacy media that they were supposed to be doing it?
Yeah, it's always funny to me, like when I go to events and I see somebody with some press badge and they got this huge camera, this massive backpack, and then there's just me with my camera, and I usually either have like my mom filming it or my cousin or my friend, and I end up like doubling them or tripling them in views because it's more authentic and real.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who has to then send that video to somebody, then they send it to somebody, then they approve it, and then they post it. And so you're seeing people like we're done with the BS. Nobody wants some twisted narrative on things. I just watched someone 60 Minutes go to SecHot, which I did a year ago, first ever American to go inside of SecHot. And then they're using my video, and then they're talking about how unjust it is for these prisoners to be inside of solitary confinement. Meanwhile, those people are literally what killed an innocent life. And it's a white liberal telling people like, oh, this is unjust, unhumane that they're putting prisoners inside or gangsters inside of a prison who literally killed people. And so people don't care about that anymore. It's like the Sydney Sweeney interview. Like we're all just like, no, like that's not how it is.
Yeah. No, the fake outrage is pretty incredible. And I imagine if those people were living in their houses or in their neighborhoods, they'd probably have a problem with it. But
Yeah.
as long as it's not in their backyard, it doesn't really matter.
It's just like they're not even in tune with reality. Like they're not in tune that, yeah, maybe Somali fraud is not a good thing to be happening. Like,
Yeah, I think,
that makes you
fraud
such
in
a
general is a
racist.
bad thing. I think we could all probably agree on that,
Yeah.
except for in 24-25, because if it's fraud that somehow lets their TDS, their Trump derangement syndrome kick in, then I guess that kind of fraud is good. Or the usual like, well, it's not really happening. Well, it's happening, but it's not really bad. Oh, it's happening. It's actually really good.
Yeah.
All the way down to like you're racist. You know what I mean? Like
It's amazing
the
what
chain
your
of
dad
progression
has
is
done.
always the same.
It's amazing what President Trump has done because it's like he's this person who has became so polarizing to the point where even if something makes perfect sense, they won't rationalize it. Like maybe don't take Tylenol when you're pregnant. Oh, I'm gonna start taking Tylenol when I'm pregnant. Like it's crazy. Like your dad is such a savage in that aspect of that he's literally became a figure to where even if he does say the most common sense thing, people will then not believe it.
No, it's not say. Nick, we hear the word accountability a lot. What does accountability for this fraud look like to you? What should happen next, in your opinion?
Yeah, what would happen to you if you stole $10 million?
I'd be in
Just
jail
curious.
for a long time.
You'd be in jail, right? So
Yeah.
I think we're all hoping that these people will be like, can you imagine if Tim Walz gets put in jail, right? If for the
Well,
kind
I
of
heard there were whistleblowers, at least on the food program fraud, where there were whistleblowers, and he was like, he basically threatened them. They didn't get promotions. They lost, accountability for pointing out, what was then perhaps the largest fraud scheme, in America going back years. I mean, I remember a time when whistleblowers were beyond reproach and they could do anything right as long as they were whistleblowers against Trump. Now they turned out to all be liars and hucksters. We figured that out after years of investigation. They spent $50 million on Russia. It seems like accountability means two different things depending on who's the one that's actually committing the crimes.
Hmm. So I think the accountability we want to see happen with this is we do want to see people actually be held criminally for what they've committed. If you stole $10 million, you'd be in jail. If I stole $10 million, I'd be in jail. So therefore, if Tim Walz is accountable for, let's just say, even $1 million of this fraud, whether he has to spend 10 days in a prison cell or however many years a judge finds him guilty for, that's what he should have to do. And same with all the other fraudsters and all the other corrupt politicians who allowed this to happen. It's time to take it serious. And this is such a pivotal moment for the current administration to really show, like, okay, we're holding people accountable for what they've done.
Yeah, like I saw Cash put out a thing on it. They've been looking into this for months. And I guess the thing is this: it's not just the people at the daycare centers or the people taking that check. Where's the money going? Where's the other funding? I mean, this is complicated stuff to track down because you really can't just take out the one daycare center or the 50 or the 100 that are there. You got to see where all this other stuff is going so you can uncover what is probably a much larger, corruption case than even what you've discovered, which is, again, billions of dollars, in my opinion, probably at least. But it seems like it's going so much further than that. And, it all probably ties back to some sort of Democrat fundraising apparatus where these businesses are then making sure that they're electing the people and the Democrats so they can keep perpetuating these fraudulent policies. And it's just a never-ending vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is a never-ending vicious cycle. But I think if they do go after the person who's most accountable for this and who has even said that organized crime, he's even admitted to organized crime, and Tim Walz has, before the fraud. So he's known about this fraud for a long time. So if they go after him and then continue to go after everybody else, then you'll see massive change and you'll see real accountability be held.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. What are the next ones you're working on? Can you give us any hints?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are messaging me to go to California, Ohio. There's a lot of fraud, and I like now if I show up to some, I'm sure all these people are like I'm public enemy #1 for them. So I'm like, how do I do this? But I got some stuff up my sleeve, and I have more videos and ideas and whatnot. But I'll continue on the path where I'm at, and now we've just unlayered a whole new, because everyone knew about fraud, but to this level, it's crazy.
Yeah. So Nick, thank you for all that you're doing, man. Where can everyone, follow you so they can see all your work, so they can, get this message out there, so they can just make it be known, let people understand what's actually happening. I mean, the truth shall set you free. Where can they find you?
Yeah, everywhere. It's just Nick Shirley on all platforms.
Okay.
As simple as that.
Check out Nick. Really incredible work, man. Really impressive for a kid your age. That's not a kid, I guess 23, but when you're old like me, everyone's a kid at this point. I never thought I'd be that way, but keep it up. It's brave, it's important, and really proud of what you're doing, man. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much.
And keep up the great work.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Be well, buddy. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. This is exactly the kind of story we're going to keep covering. The stories the mainstream media won't touch. So just remember to like, to share, to subscribe. Spread this episode around because the American people deserve to know where their money is going. They need to know what's actually happening. You can turn on your mainstream media source, and if they give this a few seconds, I'd be shocked. They'll cover for it. They'll come up with excuses for it. You know what's happening. We've seen this all before. So make sure to share it. Click that like button right now before you leave. That's how we break this mold that we're in. That's how we get out of this vicious cycle of insanity and make sure that people can start seeing what's really happening in their country. Check out our incredible sponsors down below in the video description. It's because of them that we're able to do this. That's a big deal. Support those who share your values. Go download MXM News for all of the headlines here. That's my news app. You can tune it to everything that you like. You can see news. It will take both sides of a story so you can actually see what's going on, not just listen to the narrative. So guys, stay strong, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay a little bit triggered. I'll see you guys on Thursday.